rule, but we believe in Allah Azzawajal, we believe in the rule of Allah, and we'll swiftly move on from there, without sugarcoating anything. طيب. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه, this is hadith number 15. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. رواه البخاري ومسلم. On the authority of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, whose name is Abdurrahman ibn Sakhar, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, let him who believes in Allah and the last day speak good or keep silent, and let him who believes in Allah and the last day be generous to his neighbor, and let him who believes in Allah and the last day be generous to his guest. It is reported by Bukhari and Muslim. Something about Abu Hurairah, I believe, has already been mentioned in previous hadith. To go straight into the hadith here, this hadith, it describes three characteristics of Iman. This hadith, it describes three characteristics of Iman. And this again is the perfecting of Iman. The perfection of Iman. It's not, whoever doesn't do this, it becomes a disbeliever. You need to understand this. The Prophet ﷺ, the first one that he mentioned, it connects to a right of Allah Azzawajal. The first one is a right of Allah Azzawajal, which is to speak good or to keep silent. To speak good or to keep silent. This is something that is connected to the right of Allah Azzawajal. It is the right of Allah that a person, they speak good, and if they don't have anything good to say, be quiet. And this is difficult on many people. People just like to speak and speak and speak. The Prophet ﷺ, as we'll come to see, he told one of his companions that he should guard his tongue. And then the companion said, are we going to be held accountable for what our tongues utter? And the Prophet ﷺ said, will the people ever be thrown face first into the hellfire except for what their tongues have said? It's so dangerous that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ لَا يُلْقِي لَهَا بَالًا. A person will say something that he doesn't really see a big deal, and he'll be thrown into the hellfire for 70 years. The distance of 70 years will be thrown into the hellfire. One word that a person says at a time of carelessness can destroy all of your deeds. A man who was a worshipper from the people that came before us and in the previous nations, he was a righteous man. He had a brother who used to sin, and he used to always tell him, fear Allah, stop doing what you're doing. Until one day he had enough, he said, Wallahi, Allah will never forgive you. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, he called out, he said, Man dal ladhi yata'alla alayya alla aghfira li fulan. Who dares swear upon me and say that I will never forgive so and so? Allah said, bear witness that I have destroyed this one's deeds and I have forgiven this one. Which one's deeds were destroyed? Which one? The righteous one, who was working righteous, and he was doing amr bil ma'ruf, he was commanding good and forbidding evil. But at that moment where he spoke about Allah without knowledge, Allah Azza wa Jal destroyed all of his deeds. So it's dangerous. A person should guard their tongue. It's difficult, but a person should train themselves to be quiet, especially when you're not required to speak. You're not needed to speak. Stay quiet. طيب. The second and third characteristic of Iman. So the first one is connected to Allah Azza wa Jal. The second and third, it connects to the right of the servants, the right of others, other people. The first one is ikram al-jar, being good to and being generous to your neighbor, and being generous, ikram al-dayf, being generous to your guest. And being generous, it has no limit in our religion. It's according to your local customs. I might go to Afghanistan, for example, and their ikram and their being generous to a guest might be much more than what it is in Somalia, for example. I might go to the United Arab Emirates and their ikram might be much more than what it might be in Gambia, for example. So there is no limit in our deen. It is all to do with when honoring a guest. It is urf. And even honoring the neighbor comes under that as well. It is all to do with your local customs. Now, so what's the limit? The question is, what's the limit of your neighbor? How far does being someone's neighbor go? Some say it goes 40 doors down, 40 doors this way, 40 doors this way, and this way. Some say it's maybe there's no specific, there's no hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that specify who is your neighbor. Again, it goes back to your local custom. In your custom, if it means that your only neighbor is your next door neighbor that's connected to you, then that's what it is. There is no had for it. As far as the guest is not anyone that just comes to your house. There's a difference between a visitor and a guest. The guest, my brothers, is كل من مال إليك ونزل بك مختارا ومجتازا البلد وليس من أهلها. Anyone who comes to your town, he's not from the city, he comes to your city and he comes directly for you. He is not around in the area and he thinks, oh, let me go visit so-and-so. The guest is someone that intentionally comes out of his city for you. And the guest, the dayf, is definitely not someone that comes from Small Heath to Handsworth, for example, or Neachels to come and visit you. That's a visitor. That's not a guest. Although that person requires you need to uphold the generosity and welcoming that person, but what is being spoken about here is not that person. The dayf, the guest, is a person that comes out of the city into your land and your city to come and visit you, intending you. So we need to separate. There's a big blur for the people between someone who is a visitor and a guest, and someone who comes to your city for maybe 3 or 4 different reasons and decides to come and see you along the way. Yes, that person requires that you're generous to them, that you welcome them, that you open your door to them and you serve them. But this is not what is being spoken about here. And from the rulings of a person who is a guest is that you welcome them and you are generous to them, you serve them for 3 days and nights. On the 4th day, it's your job. If you want, you can tell them, "Khalas, pack up and leave now. Enough is enough. I'm sick and tired of you." Or if you're nice enough, you can let them stay for however long they wish to stay. In any case, we should know the difference between a mere guest, a mere visitor, and a guest. طيب. We'll continue to the next hadith. Hadith number 16. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رجلا قال للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أوصني قال لا تغضب فردد مرارا قال لا تغضب رواه البخاري. On the authority of Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, may Allah be pleased with him, a man said to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, counsel me, advise me. So he